when I designed the shop basically from the ground up, and there's a lot of considerations that have to go into a shop before you even bring in the first tool. For the architecture, I set up a fairly large shop. In my defense, I was without adult supervision at the time, and that explains a number of things. Columns, this is in the basement, and my architect I've got a beam that runs through the middle of the shop, and he had lolly columns every 7 feet to support the beam. And that obviously was not going to work very well for me. So I had to convince him to put in a beam that would span this. And so I've got an enormous beam. It's 6 by 12 steel beam up here that looks like it belongs in a bridge, but it gets me away with only having 1 column in here. And of course, when I was doing all the design, you need to be able to get into this place. So I've got it's a walkout basement with a double door in the back and a cement driveway that gets around back there. So I can bring big pieces of equipment or tools or whatever I need and it gets it into the shop. When I was working on this, the floor, I've got a 1x4s that are laid down, and then tongue and groove plywood goes on top of that, and then I painted that gray so it looks like cement, but it's not only warmer on my feet, it gives me a little cushion, and if I drop a chisel, I don't spend the rest of the afternoon sharpening it back up to where I can use it. The walls, I put up studs, insulated everything, and then instead of sheetrock, I got a deal on 1/2-inch plywood. So now I can put a screw or a nail anywhere I want to, and things will stay where I put them. Shops run on electric, and boy, do they take a lot. I ended up getting 400 amp service put in the house and put one panel downstairs in the basement. So I think I've got 7 or 8 220 outlets for dust collectors and equipment. And having a panel down here made that a much simpler operation. And I also put the electrical outlets 4 feet high up on the wall. They don't need to be down at knee height like they do upstairs. I'm able to reach up and plug them in at a comfortable level. The lights, it's almost too bright in here for this camera. I started out with a bunch of fluorescents, and I've been replacing those with LEDs. If it gets any brighter in here, I'll need sunglasses. And I've also got windows on 2 sides of my workbench so that I've got some natural light in here so I can see what I'm doing. And then you get into the climate of a shop. You know, Jeff Horning, I'm sure, talks about his shop a lot and how cold it gets. I don't have that problem with the insulated walls and everything. I've sealed up the ceiling. You can see above me, it's all open 2x4s, but all of the ductwork has been sealed. It's sealed with duct tape, and any of the plenums that look like they might have been exposed have been sealed with a insulated foil that runs through that bay. This does several things. One, it keeps me healthy because it keeps the sawdust down upstairs, and my wife would kill me if I get too much up there. And I've got an exhaust vent for fumes. I've got ceiling fans to move air. I've got a dehumidifier that I run during the summertime. And when we were putting in a sunroom out back, I put in a split system. So I've got heating and cooling up on a wall here. So that came in real handy. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen. And I see that. Can you see that now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
This is, we'll go through this a couple of times probably because I've got a floor plan here, but the center of that is the double doors that get me into the shop. I've got a small refrigerator, a microwave, shelves with some planes that I've collected, a sink, my Tormek system, more shelves, and various things. There's the Tormek system. I've got an overhead air cleaner. I've got an assembly table that in this picture has got wood for a table I'm building my wife. And you can see that I've got my workbench there in the background with those windows in it. And that's the workbench tools, the planes I use, grinding station. In the back there, I've got dust, where I do most of my sanding, shelves with supplies, shelves with more supplies. That's my lathe setup. We can go through any of the questions. I mean, you know, if you've got questions, shout out, but we're going to go through, you know, look at the pictures, look at the floor plans, and then start answering any specific issues that people can come up with. The most recent addition to the shop is this Cyclone dust collector that's primarily for the lathe. And it's scary how much air that thing moves. My table saw, I've got a drum sander in the corner, a shaper in the corner. You can see the clamp rack. That's that corner and showing the drill press. There's my 18-inch bandsaw, the 10-inch bandsaw, miter saw, an oscillating spindle sander, a disc sander, another dust collector. It's my joiner, planer, assembly table again, and we're back to the front door. And this is the plan that so it may help you make sense of what you've just seen. Again, recall I was without adult supervision. From those 5-foot doors to the back of the storage shelves over there is, I think, 35.5 feet. And then from the wall between the, one, you know, it would run the same direction as the jointer, that's 30 feet. My bench that I'm sitting at now is 3 feet by 11 feet, to give you an idea of the scale here. And you can look at this and immediately see that I don't have it laid out efficiently for other people. The lathe is in one spot and my grinding is all halfway across the shop open the stove. And people tell me how inefficient that is. Shops have to be personal. In my case, I need to be able to walk around a lot. I cannot stand in one place for extended periods of time and without having my back just give me fits later. So that's the once over lightly in the shop here. You know, this black circle's my air compressor. No big deal about it, but I've had 2 or 3 people that have got the same kind of automatic air compressor setup that I do, where it comes on. Our bedroom is above this section of the basement, and having the air compressor come on at 3 a.m. is not recommended to keep things peaceful. So I've got a switch on that. When I come in, I can toggle it and it'll stay on for a couple of hours and then it goes off. So if the air pressure drops at 3 a.m., it doesn't come on. That's been real useful. Are there any questions about what you're seeing here or?
What kind of a dust collector do you have on your lathe? Other than, I know you got the Cyclone, but do you go to a hood or anything like that, or?
I've got a, I can set it up and show you here. When we get to show and tell here.
One thing I'll point out too, that's in this picture, it's the compressed air with different tools is a nice feature too.
Yeah, I've got air at the lathe, air over there on that wall, and then air over at my dust collector. So, or my air compressor. So I can move air around. I know when we take classes, they don't like to have air compressors in a lot of the schools because it blows things around and can make a mess if you're not careful with it. In my case, it cleans the sawdust off my feet and blue jeans before I go upstairs, which is also a good thing.
You use that one by the air compressor for your tools that use compressed air too, don't you?
Yeah. If I'm using a brad nailer or a die grinder or a carver. Let me stop sharing and see what, okay. Let me drag this over here and maybe we can see. Charlie was asking about the dust collection. You can, it's a terrible way of doing this, but you can see the lathe there. That's got a dust hood in it. It's got one of those big dust hoods that they often have for like miter saws. And what I did was to rebuild that. Pull this over here. Was to rebuild it for a 6-inch pipe.
Mm.
And with that dust collector running and that 6 inches of draw, you can't get any dust into off a spindle or a bowl and into the room because it's just moving air too fast. And then I've also got that floor sweep, and the floor sweep is only about 14 inches wide and 2 inches tall, and I was afraid that wasn't going to be adequate, but it will actually pull a broom out of my hands. So that that piece of equipment made a real difference as far as keeping the shop clean and keeping dust out of my lungs when I'm making a bowl.
How does that piece work? Do you shovel the stuff to it or move it?
I'm sorry, Wayne, you broke up here a little bit. I don't think I heard that.
Okay, that vacuum that's on the floor, how do you work that? Do you just sweep the dust to it? It just sits there?
You just sweep it in its general direction. Anything that gets a foot with that disappears into the dust collector. So no matter how much dust I make, I can just kind of push it over there and it will clean up after itself a little bit. Carrie, you're going to have to quit rocking. You're going to make me seasick.
Sorry, not really.
But, you know, I mean, I've got a wealth of tools here. I mean, we're all turners, so I guess everybody's more interested in turning than a lot of the other features in the shop. So let me see if I can set this up. And
I did offer to be your cameraman.
well, I'm making such a hash of it that you could have certainly improved on that, but
What are you
No.
using? What are you using for your remote camera?
I've just got a little camera that normally sits on the top of my PC.
Okay, just a webcam.
Yeah, just a typical funky webcam here.
Okay,
But, you know, I've got lots of shelving. Everything I need for the lathe is either in the tall cabinets behind this, in the wooden cabinet there, the toolbox. I've got a lot of the tools that I use handy there. And then I've got a little tool cart that I just can set things down on and find them again pretty quickly. I've also got a full set of lights over here just for the lathe. I've got 3 LEDs. And I don't know if that's going to help or hurt lighting them up like that. Probably doesn't really help because of the shiny duct work. But you can see that with that dust hood, you know, normally I just let it fall down behind the lathe because it's on flex pipe. But when I put it up there, it does a heck of a job. And all I did was mount it on a wooden rod that plugs into the, whatever that is that sits at the back of the headstock and is supposed to be able to hold like a spindle for duplicating. They've got that arched piece there. I never use it for anything, so I used it for this. Can I answer any questions? Does anybody have anything that they want to see or talk about?
Hey, Steve, I see at your grinding area, you've got 3 grinders.
Yeah.
Could you talk about what's the difference between the 3 of them?
Well, I've got one that I use principally. The 2 Cbn wheels are what I use the most. I've got one set up with an angle for a bowl gouge, one set up for a spindle gouge. I've got the 2 aluminum wheels are set up also with the Wolverine system, just because it's so handy once I get the angles that they copy real easily. And the aluminum wheels have got a coarse and a semi-fine. And those I can, you know, sharpen things that are a little rougher or change something or work on a wood chisel or even a plane blade or something if I've nicked it. And then the 3rd grinder has got a wire brush on it and a deburring wheel. And that's mostly to clean up stuff. And one of the things I like to do is find old planes and clean them up and turn them into users again. So that wire wheel has just got brass on it, so it's not too aggressive. And this deburring wheel is an idea that Dave Endries gave me. And what it does is it's like a grit in a rubber medium. You've seen like the sanding erasers, and it will take, let's see, something I've worked on. I don't know if you'll be able to see this at all, but you can see where this brass piece was starting to corrode and get a little bit nasty in places. And I took it over to that deburring wheel and was able to put a shine on this brass piece in about 2 minutes. So that's been interesting.
I think if you move your webcam up closer, it'd be a better focus, Steve.
Okay. What did you want me to focus on?
I would take it into that deburring wheel. Yeah, now we're cooking. Yeah.
That's, like I said, it's basically just almost a rubber wheel, but a very, very hard rubber with abrasive in it, and it's a very fine grit.
So you buy a rubber wheel?
Well, you can buy it as, it's a number 7 deburring wheel.
Oh, okay.
What speed does that deburring grinder run at?
This one's running at 3,400,
Wow.
which is why I keep the guards on it. The other two are the slow speed grinders, but they're 8-inch slow speed. So
how often do you use the Tormek?
well, I use it a fair amount of time because, like I said, I like to take planes and clean them up.
Okay, so you use it for planer blades.
Yeah. Hand chisels, plane blades,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing.
I had a Tormek, but once I got the Wolverine, I tend to use it more than the Tormek for basic turning tools
Yeah.
because it's quicker.
Yeah. If I'm, well, particularly if I'm grinding the heel off a bowl gouge or something, the Tormek would make a career out of that.
Yeah.
So as much as I like the Tormek for a number of things, it's not effective for high-speed steel a lot of times.
Hey Steve, this is Ray. Your Cbn wheels, what grit are you using? And do either one of those have the radius edge, or are they both squared edge?
They're both squared edge. These wheels are, one of them is 220 and the other one is older. I'm not sure what it is. I think it started out life as 180, but it's starting to get somewhat worn. I prefer to not have the radius edge. The only time I found the radius edge to be useful is if I'm got the a hollowing tool, printing one of the, like a John Jordan hollowing bit. But otherwise, I prefer having the squared in the sides, because I can use the sides of that to grind a point tool flat.
Good point.
But I really do like the CBNs. They're not inexpensive, but I've got, I have bench gouge or bowl gouges that are several inches shorter than they started out life. And if it was an aluminum wheel, I'd be replacing the aluminum wheel, and it would have been changing the diameter of the wheel every few weeks, and it would just be a mess. These things have been very cost effective in my opinion.
Good to know. Thank you.
So Ray, it looks like you got a pretty extensive shop too. We'll have to have a tour of yours.
A little more compact though.
Yeah.
Well, but remember, no adult supervision when I designed it. And walking around is nice. Plus, I'm not very smart, so I need lots of tools because I can have them set up. The idea of being able to use a shopsmith, while I admire the shopsmiths, I'm nowhere near clever enough to do all the operations on the table saw that I need to do before I have to break it down and turn it into a bandsaw or whatever else my next operation would be.
Yeah, having the workbenches in the middle of the shop too worked out nice, especially when we were doing the treadle lathe. To have a good work surface where we didn't have to clean off tools just to get to it.
Yeah. You know, the idea of a workbench that's 3 feet wide isn't too crazy, but 11 feet long sounds insane to most people. Again, I'm lazy. I'm not very smart. I'm not that organized. I can put an 8-foot board on this bench and still have tools on it. It works a whole lot better for me. And this is the bench design is something I stole from a New England furniture maker named Thomas Moser. You may have seen some of his furniture, but he designs it as workbench. So he has a knee hole in the middle of it and a stool the right size that he can sit and work on. So if I'm sketching something up, I have a place to do that in my shop.
So how long have you had this shop?
I've been here since 08. No, 07. And it took me quite a while to get it where I could find things again.
So Steve, what's next? As far as the shop expansion, what don't you have that you want?
Well, my wife just announced that she's moving her sewing into the other half of the basement. So I've just found myself constrained as to what else I can get. I would like another lathe. I'm not quite sure why, but I'd like one. But the problem with the lathe is it takes up so much real estate because you want to be able to get to, you have to set up tools around it and things like that, that I'm not quite sure how I do that. Even with all the space I've got, I ended up having to put my drum sander and shaper in the corner. So I've got to take those out. They're not, I don't use them all the time. So it's not a problem to drag them out and hook them up when I need it, but it's a lot easier if I've got tools set up and ready to go.
So when you're whipping your camera around, you can walk over there and show everybody your clamp rack. And then you got a grizzly jointer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And did it have the radial or the
Helical head.
helical cutters on them?
Something else I recommend greatly.
We use that jointer a lot when we get all that warped lumber from the Capitol building. Had to make something straight out of it. So clamp rack was great.
Yeah, it's on wheels, so I can pull it out of there and take it places. When I'm working on a project, if I need to, I can pull it over to that assembly table. I can't see what I'm showing you unless I drag the computer along with it.
Yeah, we're seeing the clamps.
But the joiner and planer, okay, there's the dehumidifier I've got set up that runs all summer. But the jointer is an 8-inch long bed, and it's got the helical heads. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with helical head, but they're basically carbide inserts. And the way they're staggered here, you're only engaging one of these teeth at a particular instant in time. So the full power of the motor is behind one of those teeth, and it produces a very easy cut. Helical heads are also quite a bit quieter than the normal conventional knives. Now I've got a planer, or my planer is a 15-inch planer, just because the 20-inch was, I couldn't justify a 20-inch. And I very seldom run into boards that are more than 15 inches. And if I do, I've got hand planes.
Does that have the helical head on it too?
Yes, it does.
Do you hook up vacuum hoses to the planer and joiner when you use them, and do you have those ports available?
They're hooked up permanently. You can see that.
Oh, okay.
Where is it?
In the back, yeah.
Yeah, that's hooked up. And then over on the planer, I've got it drops from the ceiling. That white pipe is the drop for the dust collection here.
Do you have ground wires running through all of your dust collection?
No, I don't.
Never felt the need, or?
Never felt the need. There is a lot of conflicting information on the internet. Conceptually, I can understand why it would be a good idea. Practically, if you're in a home environment, you've got enough moisture in the air generally, and you're not running it for hours at a time where it would build up a static charge. And you're not producing enough, generally not producing enough, fine enough sawdust to be explosive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's, while I'm all about safety, I've never been shocked by any of this. I've never seen any static electricity built up here.
I think the other thing that was handy was back there on your chop saws. I think you had a table built up around the chop saw so that you could lay extended boards on it. Didn't we have that kind of set up?
They were just L brackets basically that you could move around and set them up on there.
Yeah.
But I'm, you know, I'm terrified of the idea of winning any more wood as a door prize at the meetings. I've got too much already, and while I'm unwilling to let go anything bigger than a toothpick, I really don't need any more anytime soon. And if I do, I know where to find it. And there's the workbench, and you can see the knee hole that I've got built into it to sit and do sketches.
Do you keep your turning wood in the shop also? Log pieces and that, or do you keep them somewhere else?
They're all here. Let's see again. I'm kind of tethered to the computer and I don't want to drag it around, but I have lots of wood. And I found it takes so long to dry it, even inside here. It takes quite a while to dry wood. You know, a lot of people enjoy working with green wood, and I don't mind green wood so much, but having it move and having it dry out and split later really annoys me. And I've had some pieces that I really liked, and I got them what I thought was plenty thin enough where they shouldn't crack, and they cracked anyway. Where I left them nice and thick so they wouldn't crack, and they cracked anyway. So I don't think I've figured out green wood as well as I need to yet. And it annoys me when I spend time on something and it does its own thing. So, what is everybody else doing for shops? I know what Steve and Tom are doing for shops and such, and Ray, we can see part of his right now, but
I've got a few pictures if you want to see. I've got a few pictures to share if you want to see. I've got a wood kiln. I've got a one of those freezer kilns that I'm playing around with. I put in the corner of the shop, and it adds a nice little, or it adds some more complication to trying to figure out how to dry wood. Because you get something nice, and then sometimes you think it's not gonna, it's not. It is hard to figure out. Sometimes it dries out way too quick, and then sometimes it turns out perfect. I can't figure out the science to it yet. It's just a matter of luck.
yeah.
So it's an old freezer that you put a light bulb in and got fans blowing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, actually, I just have the, I got one heating element out of it's just a ceramic coil for reptile tanks. Light bulbs kept blowing. So I put one of those in there. It does pretty good. I've got a thermostat on it, and it keeps it, kind of like the first phase I put it in is about 90 degrees. But it'll keep it between 90 and 100 with no problem. I picked up a free freezer off of Craigslist. Put about 30 bucks into it. It does pretty decent. It'll hold probably 20 bowl blanks. But I haven't figured out the routine yet. I put a whole bunch of walnut bowl blanks in there and cracked about half of them. A little little frustrated.
Yeah, and part of the problem with that is you don't know if it's your fault or not.
Exactly.
I mean, because they could have been felled and they may have just hit the ground too hard when the tree got cut down.
Well, yeah, so you never know.
Steve, do you monitor the humidity down in your workshop at all?
I do, because it's inside, it doesn't vary a lot. But it stays in the 40 to 50% range pretty much.
Wow, that's wet.
Well, it's 40% at 72 degrees upstairs. So that's what the humidifier is set on, or the whole house humidification system. And it's not really as wet as it sounds. It's not like you're, there's no ice forming on the windows when it freezes or anything. And then when it does get humid outside during the summertime, I run the dehumidifier, and that will keep the humidity down into the 50% or 40% range. But
go on.
But because it's in a basement, it won't get any colder than about 60 degrees in any event. During the bad February weather, it didn't get below 60. And then during the summertime, it'll get up into, 75 or 80 in here, but that's unusual too. So it's pretty temperate.
Yeah, you've got some forced air into your shop.
No, well, I have a split system that will run forced air. It's a heat pump system. You've seen the little wall units up that hook to a heat pump. It's not like a whole house system.
Okay. Above that tool rack.
Yeah. So I've got that for heat and cooling in here.
You don't have any, you don't have any return air ducts in your shop.
No.
Okay.
No. And the system is sealed up. All of the ductwork got wrapped in foil, and a lot of that then I put this aluminum insulated ductwork up there, so I do not get any heat from upstairs, and I don't transfer any dust upstairs, or no more than I track in when I go upstairs with my dirty shoes.
Hey, Steve, are you pretty happy with I noticed some of your dust collectors have bags, and then your newer one has the HEPA filter. You're noticing a big difference there?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a true HEPA filter.
Yeah, I can't think of what they call them, but the canister filters, yeah.
That canister filter, I've emptied, I haven't had it for a long time yet, but I've emptied that 50-gallon drum 2 or 3 times, and there probably still isn't but about 4 cups of sawdust in the bottom of that canister.
Wow.
It may take me a year before I'll ever empty that out.
Mine works the same way,
Just the
Steve. I
Cyclone
have
being efficient.
yeah. I have the same type of filter on mine, and I empty it's got a 30-gallon barrel, and I've had it in there now 3.5 years. It's 4 years old in April. Anyway, that 30-gallon barrel I empty very frequently. And because I connect that to my saw, both lathes, and bandsaw and the planer, when I run my planer, it's amazing how well that sucks all the stuff out of the planer. But that at the bottom of that canister it has a plastic bag, and I don't think in 4 years I've gotten a gallon of dust at the bottom of that thing. And then every month or so I go and it's got a crank that you crank to shake the pleats on that filter.
Right.
And I'll do that thinking, oh, that'll get a lot of dust down in that bag, and it doesn't. You know, mine's a Laguna. It's a 2 horsepower. It moves 1,750 cubic feet a minute. You know, it's amazing how much air that moves.
But again, that is one of the Cyclone systems.
Yes.
And the other 2 systems I've got are not Cyclone. And so it's like, man, I'd like to replace it. But again, it works pretty well now, so I'm not sure how badly I need to replace it. But those Cyclone systems are amazing. They really are efficient. And the fact that, you know, I've got 8-inch ductwork that comes off there, and I've got 8-inch ductwork that goes down to within, you know, 3 feet of my dust collection and 5 feet of my floor sweep. It just moves so much air. It's amazing. It's, you know, the math will tell you that you can move more than twice as much air through a 6-inch duct than you can with a 4-inch duct.
That's right.
When you've got an 8-inch duct, it's almost silly.
Yeah, mine
I know.
starts out at 8-inch, and then I drop it to 6-inch, and then I go off into 4-inch. But it tells you should always have 2 4-inch open. You should never restrict it below, basically, like you say, a 6-inch opening, or it won't work right.
Yeah. Let's see, I've got, I ran that over to my a sanding station here, and I've got a number of drops that I use for picking up sawdust and going back and forth, and actually just hooking up my shop or my floor sweep to it. I've got a hose with a vacuum on the end of it that I just vacuum the floor up.
One of the other things I do to control dust is I use my shop vac, or sometimes I use the big vac system, but I'll use my shop vac onto my oscillating sander. And it's amazing how much that shop vac will suck the dust away from that oscillating sander. And I've hooked it to my belt sander as well, my portable belt sander.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, you know, I used to use shop vac for my stuff because I'm nowhere near what you have, but I bought that little cheap system at Home Depot that just uses a 5-gallon bucket and does the Cyclone with a shop vac, and it's amazing. I just dump that 5-gallon bucket when I'm done for the day, and I have nothing in the shop vac. It's amazing.
The only thing I find in using the Cyclone with the shop vac is, all the bigger stuff, quote unquote, is in the Cyclone. but the doggone dust filters in the shop back do really end up clogging up quick.
Yes.
Because it's getting is the real fine dust, and it's just clogging up those filters. I just change them and wash them, and it's just one little thing that, oh boy, that thing's not sucking very well, so I got to change the filter again.
Yeah, I probably haven't had it long enough, and I'll probably, as soon as spring gets here, I probably will clean the filter. I just haven't had to yet.
If you're doing a lot of sanding, that filter will clog up real quick.
I use my vacuum system, and I predominantly do lathe and chop saw type work that is hooked up to the vacuum. But the lathe work is principally sanding, and of course that's fine dust. So that's probably why my filters are clogging up so fast, because it is mostly sanding dust rather than sawdust and lathe chips.
Yeah, I hooked mine up to the table saw and the mostly the saw and the planer and the joiner and the band saw. I can hook it up to all of those.
Well, when you've got lots of power, you can get away with some dumb stuff too. The takeoff I've got here, theoretically, it's in the wrong direction. You know, it doesn't have the smooth airflow, but because I needed to take it under this beam and over the shelves over there, it just made more sense to me to mount it that way. And because that 6-inch duct work, it pulls it. It doesn't even care that it's pointed the wrong direction. So I made a conscious decision to try that out, and it worked like a charm.
Do you have blast gates in your system, Steve, or what do you use to shut them off?
I've got blast gates. These are, I've got a remote control to turn the system on and off. So I can turn it on and off readily. And then each of these are on a blast gate. You can't see that when I'm doing it, but they're blast gates. And then, of course, when I'm over in my sanding station, I've got a bunch of blast gates. You can see I've got one down here. That that gets sucked up and compressed as soon as I turn the system on. But then I've got all of these here that I hook up to various machines or my sanders as I use them. See, those are the planes that I actually use. My other wall is just planes that I've played with. Because I do a lot of flat work and other things, you know, make molding for neighbors and various things around the subdivision here. You know, I've got lots of different things that I've had and done and played with. So if anybody would like to come out and resaw veneer, or, you know, do some flat work, let me know. I'm more than willing to open up the shop, particularly after we all get COVID shots. And, you know, people are generally welcome down here, and making sawdust is fun for me, so.
You still going tomorrow, Steve?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got my wife and I got our COVID appointments for tomorrow.
Good. I've got both, my wife and I both have had our second shots.
Sounds like there's finally starting to open up around here a little bit.
Steve,
Yeah,
have you
my second
heard any
shot.
more about that burl?
I'm sorry? Oh, the
Have
burl?
you heard any, the burl that you were talking
Yeah.
about getting?
So he's going to go down in when it's turkey season, I think. And so it's going to be, you know, next month before he goes back down to his property and cuts that down, and he'll let me know when he does.
Okay.
I'm going to go down. I'll try and meet him on his way back up, because he lives up north somewhere, and it would be a hike to go visit him. And meeting in the middle somewhere just really doesn't save people a lot of time.
I've driven my truck all the way to northern Michigan to get a burl, so.
Well, I've still have some cherry burl left that I got in Maine. I was up there at a class, and one of the a tree service pulled up in a truck and said, you know, I've got some cherry burl in the back of the truck. Is anybody interested? And anyone who was standing in the doorway would have been trampled to death, because that whole emptied out in a heartbeat. And everybody's going through picking on stuff, and they sitting aside, I want this and I want this. And then one guy stands up, slaps his forehead and says, I flew here. And then this guy goes, I'm from New York, but I drove up in my Porsche. And so it turned out I pretty much got my pick of anything in the truck, because I drove there in my pickup truck.
Smart man.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to be in the right place at the right time.
That's absolutely right. Well, I hauled a nice cedar burl home and a hard sugar maple home from Petoskey, Michigan. And if anybody knows where Petoskey, Michigan is, it's about 45 minutes south of the Mackinac Bridge.
Well, I hope this was a little interesting. It's
very good. Thank you, Steve.
It's tough to do a show and tell when you can't put your hands in any of the tools, and we're all tool people, so it's a little frustrating. Of course, Kerry's got the right idea. He's sitting there sipping whiskey and laughing at me, but everybody can retire now and do the same. If there's any questions, or you need shop time for anything, or want to take a look at how I've got something set up, shoot me an email and we'll work out something on getting together.
Hey, Steve,
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
with your deburring wheel, and as I know it, a rubber bonded abrasive wheel, I was cleaning up a skew chisel one time, and it did a real nice job, except the corners got sharp. So I had to round those over so I wouldn't get cut up using it. Just, I don't know if you ran into something like that on flat stock and the edges.
No, I'm not really using it for a lot of sharpening.
I wasn't using it for sharpening. I just used it to clean it up. But, I went over the wide flat surface and then along the thickness of it, and that left enough of an edge to cut.
Well,
But like I said,
it's
you
almost
clean
like
it.
I
a
can see how
hone.
that would happen, but I've never done it because, on a skew, if you can, you want one edge of the lower end of that rounded so you can come around on it.
Right, that was before I knew that.
Yeah,
But I just thought I'd mention it so you could watch out for it.
yeah, it will definitely move material.
Yeah.
It's just nice to have something that will replace an hour with a steel wool.
Yeah, it's a lot better than that, a lot faster.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the I'm lazy thing.
Oh, I call it efficient.
You can buy that product in small mounted wheels for the die grinder, all shapes and sizes of that. I used to use that when I was working as a tool and die maker and doing more mold work. Use some of that for early part of the polishing of a mold. Worked real well. You had to be careful though. You got too aggressive with it, you could remove too much metal.
Yeah, it will move metal. And people tell me I can use much rougher grits on those CBN wheels, that there's no reason to use anything finer than 180 on most of the tools I'm doing. And I just like the way the 220 and 240 and that kind of thing works on it somehow. But a lot of
I agree
preference.
with you. If you go to a coarser grit, all you're going to do is grind away your tool faster.
Yeah, and that's one thing that this Wolverine system and having CBNs has done for me. Since it's not painful to grind it, I'm grinding more often and more successfully, and the tools stay sharper and a lot more fun to use that way.
Yeah, and you really don't have to take much material off to get a sharp edge again if you sharpen frequently.
Yeah, and do the same thing on my woodworking chisels. Before I put them away, a lot of times I'll just hit them with drag them across a strop. And doing that keeps wood chisels sharp much longer than you'd think it would. If there are no other questions, I'll let people have their Sunday evenings back.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Good job.
It's been my pleasure. And like I said, if there's any questions or anybody has follow-ups they want to get into, just let me know. I'd be happy to talk to them.
Thank you, Steve. Now I feel bad. My whole shop would probably fit on your 3x11 table.
Well,
Not quite, but close.
but yeah, But remember, that's a reflection of me not having adult supervision and not being very smart. So those are probably not the problems you have.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm still learning, but it's fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you learn from your mistakes. And after 45 years, I've got to say that I may be the smartest woodworker I know. That's the criteria, you know?
Yeah. Thanks again.
Sure enough. We'll talk to y'all later.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.